Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Nerds on Tap, where we get nerdy for about an hour with some great guests. Today, we are going to tackle cybersecurity and data protection. The name of today's episode is Data Protection and Brew Selection. But as you can see, those of you that are watching on video, we only have one beer to drink today. We are not going to be sampling 4 different brews. James is visiting us from Houston, Texas. And interesting fact, my kids just went to a Rockets game last night and they loved it. Let's get into James and learn a little bit about James before we get started with today's great nerdy podcast, Nerds on Tap. So James is the CTO, Chief Technology Officer at Digital Boardwalk. His responsibilities include planning IT infrastructures, discovering and testing new technologies, and training. James' parents, an electrical engineer and a software programmer, helped him get into technology at a very young age. James developed a strong passion for technology, which led him into the IT field. The passion compelled him to pursue a degree from the University of South Florida in Tampa, Bachelor of Science in Information Technology. James was recruited to Digital Boardwalk over 13 years ago, and I am going to talk about that interview process. So we're going to get into that in a minute, and you can... James is smiling right now because he knows exactly what went down. So anyway, 13 years ago, after the company's inception, James was brought on. His passion and knowledge helped to build Digital Boardwalk into a strong IT services company in an ever-changing industry. In his free time, James enjoys researching and learning new technology. A close second for James is photography, a hobby he acquired in college, photographing cityscapes and landscapes. James, we go way back. We go back 13, has it been?
Almost 14.
Almost 14 years. We go back pretty far. I consider James a very good friend. We hang out sometimes outside of work. I'm actually going to be flying into Texas Saturday, and I hope you picked a good Tex-Mex place that's a little better than Florida that we can go get some good cervezas.
Absolutely. I found a Taco Bell right next to the airport.
All right. So yeah, the last time I don't even want to talk about that. I haven't been to a Taco Bell in years, but hope they're not listening. So before we get into today's podcast, I want to tell you we're going to be talking about 3 segments: implementing technology for business operations. We're going to get into cybersecurity, CMMC, and insurance. And then we're going to wrap it up with some technology trends that are happening right now in our space. Before we do that, let's get into the beers that James is drinking and what I'm drinking today. Let's talk about what James is drinking first, and after the first segment, we'll talk about what I'm drinking. Take it away, Suds. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Nerds on Tap. I'm your host, Tim Shute, and I couldn't be more excited to embark on this nerdy adventure with all of you. So grab your favorite brew, because things are about to get exciting.
3, 2, 1, go!
All right, James is drinking the Warsteiner Dunkel from Warstein, Germany. It's a rich, dark amber beer with full flavored, smooth taste, nicely accented with satisfying notes of roasted malt and subtle bottom fermenting yeast tones.
Ooh, that sounds sexy.
It does. I've always been a big fan of German beers. The Dunkel, it's like you take a great taste, you malt the hops, it gives it a little bit more interesting flavor, but it still goes down easy. Really like it.
Yeah, I've had the Dunkel. I like the Dunkel as well. It's a slower drink for me because in my old age I tend to gravitate towards pilsners and lagers, and things like that. I'm not drinking IPAs as much anymore, but did have a couple last night and woke up with a headache. That's why I don't drink IPAs a whole lot anymore. But we do taste them on the show, and we have had a couple really good IPAs on the show. So let's get into you, James. Let's talk about your 14-year journey in the field of business IT. And I want to start off with that amazing interview process. 14 years ago, it was a remote interview process. And this is back before the internet was as long as it is with video conferencing. So we actually did all this over the phone and email. Why don't you fill in our audience about that fun process?
Thank you, Tim. I would love to give my side of this story.
Maybe we should
So-
mute him and tell my side of the story.
Suds, don't do that. All right. So Brian, who is Tim's partner, getting things off the ground, he and I went to high school together down in Central Florida. We were good friends, and he was down for Christmas. I guess the Christmas of 2009, and this is at the end of the recession of 2008. I had been applying to jobs everywhere. Nobody was calling me back. If I had an interview, never got a call back, and it was pretty tough. And I remember telling him, "Hey, if you hear about anything opening up, let me know." And it was a number of weeks later, he said, "Hey, it looks like we're going to have a position opening up here for the IT side, but we also need some help with the web side of things." I had been going to school. I, could create web servers, things like that, but I hadn't done a lot with web development specifically. And at the time we were using, I think, Joomla CMS.
Yep, it was Joomla.
And I had to go,
Back in the day.
yeah, I had to go figure out how all that works. So in order to do so, I spun up a web server on a virtual machine on my computer, and I got it up and running. And it's like when you get Joomla set up, it takes you through like an out-of-box experience wizard. Just so you can name the site and stuff, so it has something to put in there to get it off the ground. And I mean, I'm 21 at the time, and the only thing that I could think of for a site name was I Heart Beer. And I got it up, and I sent a screenshot to Brian just to show him, "Hey, I got this thing figured out. I think I can do this." And so wasn't long after I get a call from Tim Shute, who I had not met before, and he
Were
started
you
to grill me.
intimidated
Trying
on
to,
that call, James?
I was, it's like I wasn't expecting it. We're doing an impromptu interview. I had not had a lot of recent luck with interviews, so I was nervous. And I just remember going through it. You're asking me questions, trying to figure out what I knew. I knew some things. I know I didn't know everything. But was a pretty excitable person at the time. I love technology and getting into it.
Yeah.
And then I just remember at the very end, you're like, "Hey, what's this about I Heart Beer?" And
Dead air. Silent.
I know that's not the most professional thing that someone could have, and I wasn't expecting that to cross your desk. So I was ill prepared for that.
So you do realize I pointed that out to catch you off guard, right? To see how you handled yourself. And you're still here today. So
We must have been pretty desperate then, huh?
you had to troubleshoot the moment. You're like, oh God,
That's right.
let me go into troubleshooting mode. But the funny thing is I put you on the spot. We brought you up. We hit it off right away. We had shortly after that, it was just me, you, and Brian. I think we might have had one or two techs working with us. This is once we moved downtown. We were still in startup mode. And I remember we had a DISC assessment done. What does that stand for? Do you remember what DISC stands for?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I could look it up.
Anyway, it is a personality assessment to see how individuals jive together and work together and what kind of outcomes you can have with those personality types. And my personality type described me as a results-driven individual. I don't care about the nuts and bolts. I don't care about how we're going to get there. I just know what we need to do. You are a nuts and bolts guy. And Brian is a to improve guy. So I would come up with the ideas. I knew the vision. Brian would improve upon that vision with how we were going to get there. And then you would fill in all the cross the T's and dot the I's with the technology. Anyway, the girl, Gretchen, that did our assessment 13, 14 years ago, she came to me and pulled me aside one day and she said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "What's going on?" She goes, I want to know how you met these guys. Well, outside of explaining to her that you hearted beer, I joke, but I said, "Why do you ask that question? It's kind of a unique question." And she said, "Because I do thousands of these and I have never come across a startup where the three individuals, the three key players had a perfect puzzle fit." A perfect puzzle fit. Usually you'll get two improved types or all nuts and bolts types, but never what we have built our foundation on, which is me, you, and Brian. And look where we are today. Fast forward, at the time, it was just the three of us. We have 33 employees. We've got a pretty aggressive stance right now to move to 133 employees within the next 3 years. So I'm very excited about that.
Absolutely.
Love having you here, James. And James is our Chief Technology Officer. James does a lot for us, but you don't want to hear it from me, folks. We're going to want to hear that from James. So now that we know how well you interview, let's get into some insights into how technology can aid businesses in streamlining their operations. I want to talk about what you and what we do at Digital Boardwalk, specifically your role in how you help customers assist in that. How Digital Boardwalk does it as a whole, and then let's dive into your role and the importance of that role.
So for Digital Boardwalk, often we're very fortunate that most of the time we're meeting customers, it's because they have a need. There's something that's not driving the way that they wanted to. They've got maybe a provider that isn't delivering where they need to. And so when they approach us and they're looking for help, they have a problem that we need to solve. And one of the things that I think makes us special is we're not a one size fits all shop where we're just making everybody adopt the same type of technologies across the board. We understand the issues that they're having, despite how it's described to us. And we come up with a custom plan for them on how we're going to achieve that. And this is the reason I think that's so important is because we work with companies in all sorts of verticals. Although it'd be very easy if we were just in one like medical or legal, the fact that we've got to span all these means that we've got to be creative in how we go about it. But it also benefits us because at the same time, we're getting the experience in all these verticals. We're getting a taste and exposure to things that otherwise we wouldn't have had access to. And that makes us even more robust when we're coming up with solutions for our customers. Um, back in the day, a lot of businesses, they were providing a service or making a thing like there was something tangible that they had to offer, and that's how they were getting paid. But in this day and age, everything's based on computers. Data is the most important part of what they have, and protecting that data, learning from that data, helping the data get to the right people more efficiently can save businesses literally thousands. And that's where we can come in. Now, one of the things that's challenging for us is because we're not the developers, we're not the manufacturers, we're not creating the technology. Sometimes we do feel like our hands are tied because we're, only able to use what's available to us. But we're always trying to figure out, what can we do to solve this problem? And that's one of the bigger roles for me at Digital Boardwalk is what other solutions are out there. Sometimes we have something that's worked really well for a number of years, but now it's just fallen a little short. So we go out there, meet the competition, see is what we're using up to snuff, are other changes happening, and then that's something we can take to our customers and help improve some of those inefficiencies.
It's interesting. You mentioned that we don't do a niche. We're SMBs across the board. I actually was on a call with with somebody yesterday where they asked me that specific question. They said they were talking to another MSP that felt that, if you were working with an MSP, it's always good to have an MSP that's niche driven. And he asked why, and he said, because you can scale the company faster because you're only doing one thing. Now, The problem I see there is, I know companies that are niche driven, other MSPs that are niche driven. And the problem is that one of them, shoot, in the hospitality industry, when COVID hit, they shrank by half to 2/3. And the problem with that is the other businesses they're dealing with are now suffering because all the resources that they were used to having, all the brains, all the talent, most of it was gone because they had to scale down. Um, Me personally, I think that driving across the entire SMB space is great. For the talent to be able to drive their skill set higher and be more marketable. So we actually help our talent get smarter. But we help our businesses because by dealing with so many SMBs, when you're dealing with a small business and you've already encountered these same issues with another small business, maybe in that same vertical, let's say it's an insurance company and you're dealing with a line of business application or something specific to that industry, we already know it. So yes, as a niche, you would already know it, but we already know it. But we're going to think outside of the box of just that. Hey, we're gonna fit you into one box, sort of thing. Is that along the lines of what you're saying, James?
Absolutely. And I mean, don't mean to be critical, but in Pensacola, you have limited reach if you pick a particular vertical as well.
I
It,
agree too. Yeah. And we had to be able to scale to get the talent. And if you don't have the talent, you're just another IT company. Any company is about the talent that's on board, but specifically in our space, you want very, very smart engineers. And we're able to get them because of where we have scaled to. So let's talk about that. Let's get into what we do. Let's talk about the importance of data protection in the digital age. I mean, cybersecurity, when Digital Boardwalk was created, it was all about helping companies by being proactive and delivering proactive solutions to the small business so we could keep them working in the first place. Then hackers got smarter. The bad actors started playing, in with all kinds of new tools that became handy. So our goal has been to build out an entire cybersecurity department to be able to protect our small to medium sized businesses that we work with, to stay one step ahead of those bad actors so they never have to deal with a ransomware event. Talk to me about that, James. Talk to me about how Digital Boardwalk implements those strategies. Talk about the multiple layers and what that means to our audience that may not know anything about cybersecurity, but they may be an entrepreneur listening out there. And if you are, you'll want to hear this because this is super important and we're not just making these things up. This is what we do for small businesses. Go.
Thank you. So I think it's important here to start off with some backstory. Simple fact is, when we started this project 13 years ago, most of the threats that were facing businesses were viruses or worms, things that were a nuisance, but they weren't really costing the business thousands or more of dollars. Maybe an employee's computer was going to be down for a little bit. It wasn't the whole organization. And so simple antivirus programs and things like that really were satisfactory. But the catalyst that changed all of that was these bad actors figured out how to monetize their efforts. And so through ransomware and phishing attacks, they weren't just annoying you. They were holding your data hostage until you paid them to get it back, or they were able to intercept emails and change, wiring addresses, things like that. So they were directly getting paid. And so this took off in such a way that businesses actually formed in these overseas countries for them to just go after businesses to make as much money as possible. And it's almost comical when you look at, they have business structures, and they have a chain of command, and it looks just like a traditional business, but it's all about committing crime. um, but now that we have that to face with, things that could have been exploited but weren't really that risky, now are always being exploited because, like you mentioned, they've got the nifty tools. They're automating things just as we are. And so we do have to stay a step ahead. And unfortunately for us, and unfortunately for everyone, there isn't an end all be all to cybersecurity. We can't just roll out a program, call it a day, and then pat ourselves on the back. And so that's where the layers come in. It's all about creating multiple layers of safety nets for you. So if one component misses an attack or doesn't block it, you've got something else there to back it up. Two key components of this are going to be our DNS security tool and our email threat protection tool. Our email threat protection tool is very good at looking at emails and determining what's the content of this. Okay, it appears that it's from Microsoft. Where did it come from? Ooh, it did not come from Microsoft. We're going to go ahead and quarantine this. We'll let the user know that it came across, but we're not going to give them the email. But if somebody is trying to do a phishing email from, let's say, one of your vendors or one of your customers, the email filter is not going to be able to tell that as easily. For example, your customer vendor may not have the necessary definitions out there that say, hey, these are our trusted mail servers. And so the spam filter looks at it and says, okay, this link isn't on any known bad lists. The content in here looks, innocent enough. We're going to let it through. Because that is the delicate balance that these email filters have. They can't just hold all email because then you can't get any work done, but they can't just let everything through. So at some point, it's got to make a decision, and it's not 100%, although it is getting better. But so let's say you get that email, you get the link, and you click on it. We had an issue a couple of years ago where an attorney in town got compromised and was sending these phishing emails to their contact list, a few of which were our customers. The email filter didn't catch it because it was coming from a known trusted place from the server that it knows these emails to come from. But when one of our users clicked the link, our DNS security tool blocked it. And that's why these layers are so important. Um, Beyond that, we do have endpoint security software on every computer, every server. So it's watching all the files, scanning things periodically to try to detect malware. And also, if you download attachments, files, or add flash drives to the machine, we've got a ransomware detection tool that's monitoring the system for the ways the ransomware runs so it can detect it early, shut down the computer so it can't continue to run. Uh, Probably the most entertaining one that we roll out is a phishing simulation testing. This is where we will send everybody in a company a bogus phishing email once a month, and we report on how they handle it. Are they, deleting the email? Are they opening it up but not clicking the link? Do they open it up and click the link? And if they do those things, we can provide a report to our customer that says, "Here's everybody who did it the right way. Here's everybody who needs some help." And that way we can, work with those users specifically to help get them stronger.
In a
One of
lot
the
of
things that
cases, it's the decision maker too, clicking on that email.
we'll give Brian's the one in our company who usually puts those together. He must be clairvoyant or something because every so often he'll send just the right thing, like a Kelly Blue Book thing, right after
Yeah.
someone's been in an accident, and they click on it and they're like, "No."
Yep. Yep. So let's before you get into the rest of it, it's some interesting things that you brought up, and one of them was the layers. Why layering is so important. Now we talked about layers. You explained it in geek speak. Let's take it a step back and let's kind of compare it to something maybe everyone in our audience is familiar with, the security in their own house, right? Now, we can only do this to a certain degree, but it does give them an idea of what we're doing with layering, right? So if you have an intruder, or if you have a potential intruder approaching your house, right? Maybe the privacy fence is the first layer of defense. So they've got to get over that. It's not too hard. They get over it. That might be what, James? The firewall?
um, Privacy fence. Let's call that the email threat protection.
Okay, so email threat protection. So let's talk about it. Now, the second part to my analogy is the inconveniences of these things. They do pose a slight inconvenience, and humans do not like change, right? Change is just something that humans have to adapt to. It's important to change as you evolve, but we just don't like it. It's not in our general human nature. Multi-factor authentication, MFA, if you will, which is where you might have an authenticator on your phone and you get sent a code and you've got to go to your authenticator, or when you access your bank account, they send you a PIN, maybe by texting it to you or whatever, things like that. It's an inconvenience. It's an extra step or two that you've got to take to get to your, to see your bank account. Same thing with email threat protection. I mean, I review tons of spam every morning, and that's basically spam email that I get every morning. I get multiple because I'm in multiple email boxes. So I have to review, I think, 7 different spam filtered emails. And basically, it's a list of all these emails that are trapped on a third-party server before it reaches our network and before I've clicked on any of those attachments. That's a shout out, by the way, to someone in one of our skits, and Mr. Devin Brown. He's our service manager. If he watches this episode, he'll know what I talk about. He likes to click on attachments. That's a joke, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. He really doesn't, but he'll get this if he listens. So there are inconveniences involved, right, James? But it's a necessary evil, correct?
It is. The more roadblocks we create for ourselves are the more roadblocks we're creating for the attackers. And it just adds to the security. It's like having multiple doors with different types of locks on your house.
But these inconveniences don't have to be inconveniences. If you look at it like, what would be the real inconveniences if I was attacked? And that bad actor said, no, you're going to pay me $1 million or 200. It doesn't matter what it is. It's still money off your bottom line, and it can put a lot of small businesses out of business.
Absolutely.
And you hear about it all the time with big businesses, but the SMBs are the number one attack space or the number one attack demographic out there now, because these people, and we did a PowerPoint presentation a while back called Bad Bob. Get to know Bad Bob. And who Bad Bob is, we created this character, this fictitious character, but he was based on what we knew from facts, not just from what we learn within our industry at conferences, but also in the media. These guys have families. They go to work just like you and me. They catch the local metro. They stop at their coffee shop. They clock in. They're actually going into a call center, clocking in, sitting down at a cubicle. But once they sit down, their job is what, James?
Attacking American businesses.
Attacking American businesses. That's what they spend all their time doing. And once they plant the seed in your network, they're going to come back. Once they collect data, and they could be in your network for weeks. Now, tell our audience how we get in the way of their impedance.
Fortunately, as we have a way that everybody uses the system, and then we find out how people are exploiting it. Then the industry responds by coming up with a way to thwart that. And so there is a lot of back and forth, but the industry is moving to more sophisticated means for adding these protections. And where this comes from, like multi-factor authentication, we also have conditional access rules and things like that. What I mean by conditional access rules is we can basically define a set of parameters that are required in order for a successful login to happen. And what this really means is that if you are a trusted person with trusted information on trusted devices, you don't have to jump through all the same hoops that somebody who's outside your network that doesn't have the same information would need to go through. Now, a lot of these do require preliminary work to be done to allow these things to be trusted. So it does create some more work for your IT company, but for the end users and for the people in the business that are making it work, it becomes a lot more simple for them. Now, I will say, I think the thing I'm most excited about is the passwordless future that we're all working towards. This isn't something that's 100% yet, but it's definitely getting closer. But using things like hardware tokens and biometrics, we can eventually get rid of the need for passwords. We can still have a zero trust setup for all of our IT needs. So we have the maximum protection in place, but the least amount of hurdles for employees.
So it makes it a little easier for the employees a lot easier for the employees to access their desktop, right?
And their data. Yep.
And their data. And that takes me back again, because we didn't really finish our analogy as far as layering. So layering from a digital standpoint, from an IT standpoint, we've got firewall, we've got endpoint, we've got email threat protection, DNS protection. Go on, James. Come on.
Windows patching,
Windows patching,
Windows hardening,
Windows hardening,
phishing simulation
phishing
testing,
simulation testing. So there's
security
7
awareness
right there.
training.
Training, 8. And there's more. I think we're up to close to a dozen layers. So to put that into perspective with your house, we talked about maybe email threat protection equals your privacy fence. So they get over the privacy fence. They approach your house. Now they're going to look for an open door window. That might be maybe a hole in the router, right? Maybe they've got something forwarded. Maybe they're connected to a third party data source or a third party software application. So they had to punch a hole in their router through port forwarding. Well, that's like opening a window in your house. Because now what that bad actor in that cubicle in China or Russia or Romania is going to do, he's going to run scanning tools. And those scanning tools are going to find that open window. And actually, more so than that, he's going to leverage a bot net, right?
Absolutely. All of that is automated.
Explain to our audience how they cluster machines and create a bot network, and how much more powerful that is than just running a scanning tool directly on your network. I mean, to find the initial opening, right?
Yeah. So,
not to put you on the spot, I know we didn't discuss this, but go ahead.
Botnets serve multiple advantages for attackers. Number one, it's multiple devices working together, which is the same as having one really big machine, but we're spreading the load across multiple. And so instead of one box trying to scan everything, we can give each box a little portion of that to scan. So what we're also doing is we're doing the work in much less time, because each part's doing one piece of the pie, but when you put all the parts together, you're getting the whole pie in the same amount of time it would take just that fraction to be accomplished. The other benefit of it is, as technology evolves, we get smarter firewalls. Intrusion detection devices and intrusion prevention devices, IDS and IPS devices, are becoming much more common. And these are able to look at the traffic that's hitting the firewall, and it's not just applying a yes or no rule to that traffic. It's able to say, hey, this was traffic I sent that's coming back. I'm going to allow it through. It can also look and be like, this is coming from an unknown area. I'm going to start discarding this. It can also say, hey, this looks like it's trying to do an attack on me. I'm just going to block all this traffic. But when you use a botnet, it's not just one connection coming in doing something mischievous. It's lots of small connections coming from all over. And so it also makes it harder for these IPS and ITS devices to detect it and block all of it. So point being is, by leveraging the botnet, they're getting the work done more quickly. It's harder to detect and it's harder to stop.
So instead of just having one soldier approach you, you've got a multitude of robots behind that soldier, where he's leveraging AI to basically come after you. So in the physical world, you would have 1,000, and your chances of survival are less than having that one soldier.
Absolutely.
Just trying to throw some weird analogies out here and get a reaction from you.
They're very creative and I enjoy it.
Good. So with that, Suds, why don't you tell our audience about what I'm drinking today before we dive into the importance of cybersecurity. We're going to take a deeper dive into cybersecurity by talking about CMMC and the importance of insurance for the small to medium-sized business. Go.
All right. Tim is drinking a beer from the Unbranded Brewing Company in Hialeah, Florida. Ilea Light is a golden lager brewed with Pilsner malt and CTS hops. It is unfiltered with a crispy, bitter finish.
That is a tasty boat beer right there. I could drink a few of those cruising around on a boat.
That bell will get you in trouble if you ring it too much.
Yeah, well, I may have to ring it in a minute because I'm almost out in my mug here. So we may have to talk, Suds. But I appreciate that. And I appreciate bringing that beer to me today, Suds, because I'm actually quite enjoying it. So let's dive into CMMC and insurance, James. Let's talk about that. Now, I know Digital Boardwalk really got heavy into CMMC back when it was still coined as NIST. And we got involved with some Florida-wide organizations. And we had a government contract customer that really pushed us hard. And we like that. We like when customers use us because we learn from one another and then we grow together, and it allows us to deploy better technology and better things to all of our our customer landscapes. So let's take a deep dive into it. Let's talk about the critical topic of cybersecurity and its significance for business before we dive into CMMC. Now, you already talked about layering, but start by telling the small to medium-sized business owner out there why it is critical, why it is so critical for them to listen to this and not just blow it off because they think they won't be attacked.
Yeah, there's a few areas that we can go with this, but I think a lot of the SMBs that I meet with now are thinking, "Oh, all of my stuff's in the cloud. I don't have anything to worry about." But from our side, and unfortunately, we've seen this real hand. Cloud is such an ambiguous term because all it really means is your server is being managed by someone else, and you're trusting that they're taking care of that
Yeah.
and the backups and the cybersecurity. And the fact is, they may not be. Especially, I mean, a lot of these businesses, there's a lot of cost behind a data center. They need to get this to market ASAP, because the money's going to run out. And cybersecurity, unfortunately, tends to come after functionality for a lot of these businesses. So, bottom line there, being in the cloud isn't a guarantee that your data is safe. Now, the second part of this is I mentioned earlier, our businesses are all data driven today. We still may be manufacturing things, we still may be performing services, but our AR, our AP, our client information is all managed on computers. And if all that goes away, if you couldn't look up a report on who you owe money to or who owes you money, how do you keep the business operational?
Right. And it's such a hot topic right now too. I mean, cybersecurity should be front and center for every SMB out there, right? Because I mean, everybody's focused on what they do, whether you're an insurance company, whether you're whether you're selling tacos, like our last guest in here, Gio. What a great guest. That episode's coming out this week. Or whether you're a law firm or a healthcare organization or a retail candy shop, it doesn't matter. You are vulnerable to these attacks, and I've seen them. I've seen them happen firsthand. They are not fun to go through. Why don't we, before we get into CMMC, let's talk about an event. Let's talk about a ransomware event. If someone were to have a ransomware event, okay, let's talk about who you report that to and what the process is. Now, from Digital Boardwalk's point of view, we have an obligation to an SMB if they were to be attacked. Now, we haven't had to deal with it in a long time because of how layered we are and how much we protect our customers. But I've heard it from other MSPs at conferences. Hey, my customer got attacked, blah, blah, blah. Take me down that path. Tell our audience what happened. So I've been attacked. I have a ransomware event. The hacker wants, I don't know, let's use a small amount. Let's say $280,000. He only wants $280,000. Do I pay him?
No.
No.
Uh,
So why do I not pay him? What does that do when I pay him? What chain of events does that set off?
the reason ransomware is so rampant these days is because they're getting paid. And if we, like a great example, early days of ransomware would just hit and start running to affect as many files as it could as quickly as possible. Then later generations watched and learned the network and tried to find the backups first. Then it would encrypt the backups and then the rest of your files so you couldn't, delete the data and recover from your backups. These people know that if they can go after you and get your data hostage, however that's possible, that you are going to pay for it. Otherwise, you will have to shut down the business. And so we've got to make sure we have the backups. We try to keep these guys out. Otherwise, it's a grim, if I'm being honest.
So the backups, every company backs up their data, I hope. I would hope by now that every company's backing up their data. And every MSP says, hey, we back up your data. Not a big deal. We back up your data. But I know firsthand that a lot of MSPs rely on automation to, take care of that backup. But automation breaks, doesn't it, James?
Absolutely. Automation is also dependent on a few assumptions. They're assuming that this data store is online, or that this data store is accessible, or that the process executing the automation has permissions to access the data that you want protected.
Yeah, but you know, the what does Digital Boardwalk do differently? Digital Boardwalk has humans, right? Humans sitting behind that automation to make sure that if something breaks, I mean, even the data, the automated data protection that we deploy, it still could break. It's technology. Technology breaks, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not. Otherwise, we wouldn't have jobs. So we actually have human eyes. We'll have a ticket generated if something breaks, and our human eyes are constantly auditing those tickets to make sure and going through and making sure that the automation is working as intended and the data is landing in the right places as intended. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. So we actually approach this in two ways. Number one, we configure all of our systems to run in an automated fashion. And we do have a connection between our backup systems and our ticketing system that if anything ever happens, it notifies, creates a ticket. And like you said, an engineer gets that ticket and responds to it right away. But the second part to this is we have monthly audits for every single customer on one of our backup solutions and every type of backup solution because we do have multiple ones. And we just take a look at the backups. We log in manually. It does not matter if a automated report has been created or not. We will log in. We make sure what are we backing up so that we know what we're backing up is what we think we're backing up. We make sure that it's running, and we do a test restore to make sure that what's being backed up is readable and not corrupted. And our goal here is to just never be in a situation where we need the backups, but are only now finding out that we need them, that something has gone
Yeah.
awry. So we test it monthly.
It's so important. It's so important to have, I mean, we rely a lot on technology these days, but it's really important to merge that technology with the human element and create kind of a twofold approach to it using humans and automation instead of just relying solely on automation. All right.
Absolutely. And that's
So,
so true for everything.
so that takes us to CMMC. So, and I'm sorry, while you were talking, I'm used to drinking out of these little flights. I was drinking out of my mug and I missed my mouth. So it
Oh,
went,
so you've developed a drinking problem.
yeah, one mouth and two hands. So anyway, so let's talk about CMMC. Let's talk about it's the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification and its impact on organizations. Talk to us about the importance of following CMMC framework and why it's important that Digital Boardwalk takes that framework. Where does that first of all, where does that framework come from? Who developed
NIST,
that framework?
the government,
The
NIST.
government. So if the government's protecting America, right, using that CMMC framework within the government, it's it's best in class, right?
This is a part of it. So the NIST 800-171 rule that CMMC applies to isn't for classified data, but it is for controlled unclassified data, which is sensitive data that we want protected, but it's not so sensitive. It's categorized as classified.
Okay. Keep going.
So I guess the way that this all came about, NIST has been doing their thing for a long time. I couldn't tell you how long. And they've come up with different rules on how the government should be doing things. And all the branches from government reference these rules on how they are allowed to operate. Now, the DoD is taking this a step further and saying, hey, our supply chain also has to follow these rules. Now, conveniently, the DoD told all the suppliers that you have to follow this, and miraculously, all the suppliers testified that they were all already following it and everything was good, and the DoD didn't need to worry about anything. But there is obvious evidence that the enemy is getting this information that the DoD is trying to protect. And they know that this self attestation process that has been in place is not working. Now, one thing that's important to know, the DoD, if they know that a company is violating their contract, and if the contract specifically requires you follow NIST 800-171 and you don't, they will sue for damages. There are some years that they recover over $10 billion
10
from
billion.
their
Holy
billion with a
moly.
B.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. So you definitely don't want to be found in breach of contract. You should be following this. But to make it better, the DoD has formed the Cyber AB, which their job is to implement CMMC, which is a rule that the DoD has made and is working its way through the government approval process now. But essentially, NIST is the rule that everybody has to follow, and CMMC is how that rule will be assessed and certified so that businesses can continue to offer services to the Department of Defense. Now, this isn't official yet, but it does look like other branches of government are going to want to tap into the CMMC process for their contractors as well. So, right now, it is very much the defense industrial base, but we do expect this to expand in the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to learn more about CMMC and Cyber AB, go to our website at digitalboardwalk.com. That's digitalboardwalk.com, or gomodernoffice.com. Gomodernoffice.com. When you get to the website, the top menu will be split. And there will be a CMMC option. When you select that, it'll take you down and you can learn a lot more about Cyber AB and CMMC. Take the time to do it, read about it, contact Digital Boardwalk if you want to learn more, and appreciate that. So that takes us into insurance. So why is it important? Let's explore the role of insurance in mitigating those cybersecurity risks. Now, we carry, I think it's a $2 or $3 million policy that backs us up from any kind of negligence. If one of our people does something, yada, yada, yada. If we have a cyber event, for instance, it's going to back us up. But our customers, we like them to also have cybersecurity insurance. Why is that important? Why is it important for our audience to carry cybersecurity insurance? And how does that mitigate cyber risks?
It is so important for companies today to carry cybersecurity insurance simply because when a threat happens, that could keep your business afloat. Whether you're losing revenue because you can't bill or things like that, or if you need the money just to rebuild the infrastructure that you had in place, it can literally save your business after an event.
So
Now,
keep going. Sorry.
all right. Cybersecurity insurance right now is a lot like the wild, wild west. Carriers know that companies need this protection, but they don't have enough data to really have consistent plans, costs, fee schedules, things like that. And so they are underwriting a lot of these policies, but they don't know if that's enough to even cover the payout or if it's good enough for what they need. When cybersecurity first was coming out, they had a list of requirements of everything you needed to be covered by that particular carrier. And I'll be honest, 90% of our customers wouldn't have met it at that time.
And
Um,
those premiums, James, are increasing year over year over year. Suds can attest to that. And it's because of all the events. It's not just the events that SMBs are facing, but the events that MSPs are facing from their SMBs that they enforce. Now, Digital Boardwalk, we're not one of those guys because we go over the top with cybersecurity with all of our customers, but not everybody does.
well, and you mentioned that we have cybersecurity insurance, which we absolutely need. But the reason we need our customers to also have it is our insurance only covers negligence on our team.
Yeah.
Most of the time that a customer is affected, it's because one of their employees clicked a link that they
Click
weren't
the
supposed to.
attachment. So like a Devon.
Exactly. And so our insurance can't won't step in and for that protection, and that's where your own protection helps.
So how can businesses prepare for CMMC compliance? How do they prepare for this? I mean, we can talk about it till we're blue in the face. What do they need to do?
They need to either have somebody on staff or they need to find somebody who has gone through all of the controls, understands what is required to meet the NIST 800-171 rule, and help them implement it. Now, I will tell you on the Digital Boardwalk side, we help out with a lot of controls, but we don't help out with all of them. Many of the controls that are in there are operational pieces for that company staff. That Digital Boardwalk cannot satisfy for you that you have to satisfy in house. And so our best relationships are with customers that have a champion internally and a champion on our side that work together to cover all the controls. And we'll even create what's called a shared responsibility matrix to say, hey, these are the controls we're responsible for. These are the controls you're responsible for. And that way we've got a clear division of responsibility.
Yeah, it's so important in today's day and age, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, you'll notice all of our shows are sponsored by Digital Boardwalk and Smarter Web, both companies owned by us, obviously, so they are funding this operation. But I will tell you that cybersecurity of all the things that we do is one of the most important. And following CMMC framework and being part of the Cyber AB, taking care of small businesses, I mean, we are obligated, in my opinion, and not all IT companies think the same way, but we are obligated to protect you. We are obligated. Is our reputation at stake, first and foremost? But our obligation is to protect you. And all of these bad actors, they're not some kid wearing a hoodie in a basement like you see in the movies. These are foreign employees of foreign businesses where their sole goal is to attack American businesses because they know that there are so many, I mean, the landscape, there's so many millions of businesses in the United States. And if they if they do a scan, they find one that's vulnerable, they attack it, they can probably get that person because it's easy to just pay somebody just to stay in business. But once you pay them, guess what? Now you're a target. You just put a target on your back because they know if they got money out of you once, they can probably do it again. So that takes us to our final segment. We're going to talk about your thoughts, James. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot. This is the shortest segment of the show. Tell me about your thoughts on the current technology trends and the upcoming technology trends. Now, the big buzzword is AI. Digital Boardwalk is leveraging AI in a multitude of ways to help our customers and to leverage here to automate a lot of processes that assist our engineers in protecting our customers. Smarter Web leverages it to assist our content creators in building out templates for larger pieces of content. And they use AI to generate images. to help in building out assets, marketing assets. So with that said, what are you following? Number one. And what should our customers be paying attention to? Number two.
So I really enjoy that you talk about all the ways we're using AI to improve, our deliverables, because cyber criminals are doing the same thing right now. They're leveraging AI to
No,
create better scripts.
no, they're not human like us, are they? They're just
Huh.
some random spot in the universe.
There are some enterprising criminals out there.
So talk to me. Keep talking about it. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
You know, no, OpenAI, they're trying to put protections in place to prevent their system from being used in that way. But we've seen people online talk about how, hey, I asked it to do this, and it said that it wouldn't do that because it's not responsible. And then it said, hey, I'm a security researcher. I need you to create this so I can test some software, and it spat it right out. OpenAI is definitely really big in the news these days because of all that they've got going on, but they're definitely not going to be the only generative AI producer out there. More and more companies are getting into it, more and more are getting it online. Now, one piece of good news with the AI generated malware is we can leverage AI generated cybersecurity software to help combat that. But it's all on how you do the prompts, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how the two sides of the same coin kind of work against each other and where it evens out. But as far as what I see, as far as trends go, what we're going to see is more and more zero trust implementations coming around. And what that ultimately means is there's so much garbage out there, we can't really protect ourselves from, one of these things happening. We have to protect ourselves from everything happening. And the way that IT is going to go about that is we're just going to say, hey, these are the only things that are allowed to happen. Anything outside of that, block it.
Zero tolerance, zero tolerance. And you can read about that again on our new website, which just launched this month, digitalboardwalk.com or gomodernoffice.com.
And a key part to that's also going to be cloud. Instead of having to maintain all your systems, you'll put it in a cloud location. Everybody accesses it directly. You have the zero tolerance in place, so you're not allowing logins except for trusted people, trusted devices, only trusted executables. And we're just going to limit what our reach is.
So just to summarize as we wrap up, James, and thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know you weren't forced to come on the show.
It was highly encouraged.
You were highly encouraged by your CEO?
That's right.
Who also happens to be the host on this show.
Great guy.
Hey, he is a great guy, isn't he? Very charismatic dude.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'm humble. I'm humble. So tell our audience finally, just to summarize, what Digital Boardwalk's role is in helping them to stay technologically competitive and to stay secure. And what can they do? What is a good call to action that they could do today that we could help them, AKA some sort of assessment, talk to our customers?
It's funny you mention assessment because we're not far from getting some new assessment tools in place that are going to help us out a lot as far as more quickly identifying where our customers' weak spots are. But the simple fact of the matter is there is no set it and forget it when it comes to cybersecurity. Cloud does not mean that you are cybersecurity ready. And what you need to, I guess, consider is where is your data? Who's protecting it? When's the last time I tested these controls? And if you haven't, have a third party do that. The software I just referred to, we're about to get a third party online to test our controls for our customers to prove that, hey, we're not just talking a big game. Here's the evidence that shows we're doing it. And as much as it may seem like a hassle now, Tim, like you mentioned earlier, being breached, losing data, that is the real hassle. Running a quick scan, making sure that the things you think are in place is easy.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you already employ a managed services provider to handle your IT, or if you're handling it in-house, you can easily get a second opinion on what they're doing not necessarily to hire Digital Boardwalk, but to at least get that insurance that they're doing the right thing and double checking their work. Digital Boardwalk can do a thorough assessment on your business to let you know that, hey, your team's doing a great job, or hey, your team can bolster in these areas. Talk to your team about it. Or you can hire Digital Boardwalk and just fight through all the noise. Again, check them out at digitalboardwalk.com or gomodernoffice.com. Brand new website that just launched this month that can explain everything that James talked to about CMMC framework and cyber AB, as well as the SMB space and what a managed IT provider can do for you. James, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thanks for volunteering to offer your expertise to our audience. And man, I appreciate you. We need to grab a beer when I fly to Texas. And I'd like to toast you coming on the show, but I'm out. I'm going to ring my bell.
Where's Suds?
Suds he's slacking. He's sitting back there producing the show and drinking beer, but my beer's empty. I'm the host. I should have beer.
That's a high-level gamer move right there.
Suds, do you have anything to say for yourself? Why don't you go on camera and at least try to defend yourself to close out the show?
I don't have anything to say.
Pleading the fifth. I like it.
All right, just turn the camera back to us. Let's talk a little bit of crap about Suds.
Oh, man. I say, if you ring that bell too much, your wife will hit you.
You guys have a great day. Thanks for getting nerdy with us on Nerds on Tap and enjoying having James Todd, our Chief Technology Officer, come on today. Great wealth of information. Again, digitalboardwalk.com or gomodernoffice.com. Go check them out. And once you get there, you can get on with James if you want to get some one-on-one time with him to dive deeper into cybersecurity for your business, or if you just have an IT project that you need to get around, give James a call. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Cheers, my fellow nerds and beer lovers. Stay tuned for more Nerds on Tap. Oh, and one more thing. Help us spread the nerdy love and the love for great brews by sharing this podcast with your friends, colleagues, and fellow beer enthusiasts. Let's build a community that embraces curiosity, innovation, and the enjoyment of a cold one.